Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really cool Cricut Halloween project to share. I'm going to show you how to make this faux rusted sign for Halloween. I think it turned out pretty cool and I'm excited to show you how to make your own. For this project you'll need wood for your sign, and mine measured 12 inches by 18 inches. You'll need adhesive vinyl, and the color doesn't matter. You'll need transfer tape, a weeding tool and scraper, acrylic paint and brushes, some stencil brushes, sandpaper, sawdust, clear protective spray, cinnamon, your Cricut, a cutting mat, and the cut file. So grab your supplies and head over to your computer. The first thing we need to do is grab the SVG file we'll be using for this project. You can get it for free on my blog at burtonavenue.com. I keep all the SVG files for these projects that I make and share in my free SVG library. These files will work with all kinds of cutting machines and they're free to everyone. So once you're on my site, just click on Free SVG Files and then Free SVG Library. You will need a password to get into the library, and there are instructions on the screen if you need to get one. Once you're in the library, you can search for the file Hocus Pocus Broom Co. It will either be listed under the most recent projects and cut files or under the Halloween category. You can also use your browser search to find it. I've added the unique code BA1710 after the file name to make finding this design a little bit easier. So once you've found that file, go ahead and click on the link and the files will be downloaded onto your computer. Now when you download these files online, they come in a zipped folder and you'll need to unzip or extract them before you can use them in Cricut Design Space. To do this, you'll need to go to the location where downloaded files are saved on your computer. And for me, that's on my desktop. Once you're there, look for that zipped folder that we just downloaded and double click on it. A new window will open and somewhere you should see the option to extract or unzip. Click on that and another window should open up. And this will show you where on your computer the unzipped files will be saved. And you need to remember this location because you'll have to get to it once you're in Cricut Design Space. Now click on the extract button and those files will be unzipped and they're now ready to use in Design Space. So now we can head over to Cricut Design Space and start a new project. Once you're on the canvas screen, you can click on the upload button and then click upload image and then click on browse. And now you'll want to go to that location where the unzipped files were saved on your computer. Once you're inside of that folder, you'll see several different file types listed. And we need to use an SVG file. But you'll see here, there's not an SVG file. And that's because on my computer, SVG files show up as a Microsoft Edge HTML document. And I've also seen them show up as a Chrome HTML document. So if you don't see an SVG in this list of files, be sure to look for something like that instead. So select the SVG file and then click open. Make sure it's the design you want to work with and then click upload. Select the design one more time and then click add to canvas. And now the design will appear on the canvas screen. So the first thing that we need to do is resize the design so that it will fit on our piece of wood. To do that, I'm going to create a rectangle that is the same size as my piece of wood. So I'm going to click on Shapes and then choose Square. And then I'm going to go up here and unlock the padlock and put in the dimensions of my sign. So my sign is 18 inches wide and it's 12 inches tall, but since the Cricut will only cut 11.5 inches, I'm going to put that in as my height. And then I'm going to go down here and click on the minus sign so that I can see everything a little bit better. And then the rectangle is covering our design, so we just need to click on Arrange and send to back, and then we'll be able to see the design. So now we can just drag down these arrows and resize the design until it looks good. So I'm just going to resize it to about 17 inches wide, and that makes it about 11 inches tall. And so now I'm going to center the design inside of the rectangle, and you can do that by selecting both the design and the rectangle and clicking on Align and then choose Center. And the last thing we need to do is make sure both the design and the rectangle are still selected, and then right click and choose Attach. And that will just lock our design into the rectangle, and now we are ready to cut our stencil. So you can click on the green Make It button. And this is just going to let us know that our design is big and we need to cut it on a bigger mat. We're going to need to use a 12-inch by 24-inch mat, and that's what this is just telling us. So click on OK, and over here it will change the size to 12-inch by 24-inch. And you can just scroll down and see how your design will look on the cutting mat. If everything looks good, you can click on the green Continue button. And once Cricut Design Space finds your Cricut, you'll be taken to this screen. Make sure your dial is set to vinyl, and then you can go load your cutting mat. So place a large piece of vinyl on a 12-inch by 24-inch cutting mat and smooth it down so there aren't any wrinkles or bubbles. Then load it into your Cricut by pressing the up and down arrow button. When your Cricut is ready to cut, you'll see the C button light up. Press that and the machine will begin cutting. Since this is a large design, it's going to take a little bit of time for it to cut. When everything has been cut, you can press the up and down arrow button again to unload your mat. Remove the vinyl from your cutting mat and trim away any unused portion of the vinyl. Then weed away the excess vinyl. Since this is a stencil, we'll be pulling out the letters and the shapes from inside of the rectangle. And those little lines around the letters at the top are kind of a pain to weed, but I just love the extra detail they added to this sign. Next, grab a piece of transfer tape and place it sticky side up on your work surface. Then place your vinyl on top of that and smooth it down. Rub over everything firmly with your scraper and then trim off the excess vinyl and transfer tape. Now that our vinyl stencil is ready to go, let's go work on our wood. For this sign, I used a piece of pine that measures 12 inches by 18 inches. Sand over the entire piece of wood until it is nice and smooth. Now you can paint it all white. You'll probably need to do 2 to 3 coats on the front and sides. Painting the back is optional, but I like to do just one quick coat to make it look nice and finished. Allow the white paint plenty of time to dry. Once the white paint is dry, it's time to apply the vinyl stencil. Place the vinyl so it's facing down and then pull off the vinyl backing. I like to do it this way so the vinyl doesn't curl. Now place the vinyl on the piece of wood. Match up the straight edges of the stencil with the straight edges of the wood. And if you're doing the same size and you had to make your stencil a little bit smaller than your wood, just make sure it's centered from top to bottom, and then you can match up those side edges. Once it's in place, you can use a scraper to rub over the entire design. Carefully pull off the transfer tape. There are a lot of little pieces in this design that can come up when you're taking off the transfer tape, so just make sure that you go slow and use your fingers if you need to help keep those little pieces in place. Grab your scraper and rub over the design a few more times just to make sure that everything is sticking to the wood. Since my stencil is a little bit shorter than the height of my wood, I'm going to place a piece of painter's tape over the top and bottom edges just to make sure I don't get any paint on the wood sign. Now paint on a light coat of white paint over the entire stencil. Why do we do this? Because it helps prevent bleeding. Sometimes there are small gaps between the stencil and the wood. Our hope is that this white paint will fill in these gaps instead of the black paint we'll be using later. Once that white paint is dry to the touch, you can fill in the stencil with black paint. You'll probably need to do at least 2 coats to get a nice even coverage. Once the black paint is dry to the touch, carefully pull off the vinyl stencil. You can use a weeding tool or craft knife to remove any vinyl that was left behind. The sign looks great at this point. You can leave it as is or you can distress it. And we are going to add some faux rust to this sign. Before you get started, I would recommend practicing this technique on a scrap piece of wood just to make sure you have the hang of it. It's also a good idea to take a look at some rusted objects or pictures of rusted objects to get a good idea of what the rust looks like. For my rust, I used 4 different colors of paint: dark brown, medium brown, orange, and mustard yellow. Dip the paint in one of the colors and then wipe most of it off. Lightly dab some of the paint onto your sign. While the paint is still wet, sprinkle some sawdust over it and push it down into the paint with your finger. This will help to add some texture to the faux rust. Do this all over the edge of the sign, even down onto the sides. You'll want to do different size sections, some big, some just barely there. Now dip your brush in another color of paint and wipe most of that off too. Repeat dabbing the paint onto your sign. Dab lightly over the first color of paint and sawdust. Make sure you don't cover the first color completely. You'll want to be able to see some of both colors. Repeat these steps with your last 2 colors of paint, and then let it dry for a bit. Then go back over it and repeat all those steps again. We're just building up texture and paint to make it look more like rust. After the second coat, you can just dab on paint until you're happy with the look. Let that paint dry completely and then brush off any loose sawdust. This last step is where the magic happens. Spray a coat of clear protective spray over the entire sign. Then quickly sprinkle cinnamon in random places all over. You'll need to do this quickly before the spray dries. Once you're finished and the spray has dried, you can brush off any loose cinnamon. You can do a coat of finish over the top, but it will change the color of the cinnamon a little bit, so I chose not to. And that's it. This project is finished. I think it turned out pretty cool. If you enjoyed this project and want to see more like it, be sure to subscribe and click on that notification bell so you'll get notified each time I post a new video.